Here's my audience. All over the United States in schools, children are taught a speech that starts with the words, "I have a dream." Originally, the speech, "I have a dream," was called Normalcy, Never Again by Martin Luther King Jr. King was giving his speech to his audience when a person yelled out in the crowd that he knew and said, "Tell them about the dream, Martin." King then stopped his prepared speech and started a speech about his dream that he had about equality. It's the most important and well-known speeches in history, and people not need to know about it in the life Martin Luther King Jr. lived. King remains one of the most influential civil rights activists in history. In this speech, I will first be talking about King's background and life that he lived. Second, I will be talking about his famous speech, "I Have a Dream." And finally, I will be talking about King's assassination that led to the Civil Rights Act. King grew up in Georgia and faced racism his entire life. According to an article called Martin Luther King Jr. that was found in June of 2015, King's parents tried to shield him and his siblings from racism and the hurt that it brought, but unfortunately could not, living in Atlanta, Georgia. King entered public school at the age of 5 and attended Booker T. Washington High School, where he was known as an outstanding student not only to his teachers but also his peers. King skipped the 9th and 11th grades and went straight to college at age 15, where he earned a sociology degree and was termed valedictorian of his class and student body president. Later on, he led many people in the civil rights movement, such as leading many boycotts and strikes and leading the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. Now that I have talked about King's life that he lived and his background, I will now be talking about his famous speech, "I Have a Dream." On August 28, 1963, King gave his speech, "I Have a Dream." According to an article called "I Have a Dream" speech, found in June of 2015, it is a 17-minute speech calling to end all discrimination and inequality in front of 200,000 people, where they originally expected only 100,000 people. It is also ranked top American speech of the 20th century. According to Gary Young, in an article he wrote in August of 2013, everyone complimented King's speech, even his enemies. He faced criticism from other African Americans, though, who followed the group of Malcolm X. Malcolm X and his group called King's nonviolent ways of going about racism as criminal. Now that I've talked about King's speech, "I Have a Dream," I will be talking about Martin Luther King Jr.'s assassination that led to the Civil Rights Act of 1968. In April of 1968, the United States was put in shock by the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr. According to an article called Martin Luther King Jr. Assassination that was found in June of 2015, King was assassinated in Memphis, Tennessee, where he was earlier called to support a workers' strike with the rest of the Southern Leadership Christian Conference. He was standing on the second floor balcony of his motel when he was hit with a sniper's bullet. He was immediately rushed to the hospital and was pronounced dead not only an hour later. This assassination led to an outpouring of anger and sadness all over the nation, and later President Lyndon B. Johnson signed the Civil Rights Act of 1968 on April 11th of that year. I first discussed Martin Luther King's life and background. Then I discussed the famous speech, "I Have a Dream." And finally, I just discussed the assassination that led to the Civil Rights Act of 1968. Martin Luther King Jr. remains one of the most influential civil rights activists in history. Not only will you remember from this speech the importance of his famous speech, "I Have a Dream," but also the life he led and the assassination that sparked the Civil Rights Act of 1968. A lot of people tend to forget how easy equality can be in our society today, but we also need to remember the hard work and dedication of the civil rights activists with Martin Luther King Jr. Here is my audience.